The Dukes of Dice are brought to you by Game Toppers, tantalizing mysteries, and listeners like you.
Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy in the New City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the Gateway City, St. Louis, Missouri, it's the Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board card and occasionally role-playing games. Today, the Dukes celebrate their 7th anniversary with a super secret, mysterious episode. Tune in and find out what happens. And now, the Dukes of Dice.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And Alex.
Let me do it again. Hold on real quick.
Yeah.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh,
This is Sean.
And also Alex.
Okay. That's a little teaser for something later.
Oh, is it? Oh, no.
Yeah, that's a little teaser for something later.
Okay. I think I know what this is. Okay. All right.
Anyway, Alex, happy Duke-iversary. Not Duke-iversary, but Duke-iversary.
Oh, I always think of it as Duke-iversary.
I know. We had this conversation last year. You always spell it aversary instead of I with an I-versary, which is how anniversary is spelled. Mm-hmm. So it's fine. It's fine. Okay.
Now, wait. Can I let me throw something out there?
Sure.
I also forgot that we happened to talk about a topic I pitched us doing for this episode last year. So,
true.
Yeah.
True. All right. Well, welcome. This is our 7-year anniversary episode 256, which, thanks to help from guild member Joshi and Gurr, we're calling What's in the Box? What's in the Box? Which is a reference to Seven, a fantastic movie that Alex has never seen, although he's familiar with the reference.
Yes.
I can't spoil the reference. I won't describe the reference. It's a great movie, but yeah, it's got 7 in it. It's our 7-year anniversary episode, and because of the whole secret nature and what's in the box. So great job, Josh and Gurr. We really enjoyed that title, even though Alex hasn't seen the movie, and it's really good, but really disturbing. Really disturbing. Anyway,
I've seen the clip. I've seen the clip that yeah.
Great, perfect way to, yeah.
So I do this with scary movies sometimes, Sean. I've read the summary of the plot.
Okay.
So I understand the context of the scene, and I've seen the scene, but I have not seen the movie, and will probably never see the movie.
That's the best way to enjoy things. Just that way. Just that way.
Live life. Live your life in summary.
Sure. Anyway, we get all of our help naming our episodes from our Board Game Geek Guild number 2008. So definitely go check that out. We get help with comments about all the different games we're going to talk about. We post that up a couple days before we record the episode. And then we'll give you the rest of the runners up for naming this 7th anniversary episode number 256 at the end of the episode. All right, Alex, how you doing over there, buddy?
Well, I'm good. I did want to mention for the guild thing right off the bat, we had a whole thread talking about things we should do for the 7-year anniversary. And let's check off some things, Sean, that we aren't going to be doing this episode.
Okay.
Yeah. Jesse Black suggested your top 10 games of all time. That used to be an annual Dukes of Dice tradition that when we were playing on a weekly basis and we had so many things churning in and out, but since I've gotten more up to speed and since it seems like things have kind of more settled in concrete.
Well, we didn't do it for COVID last year. We did it the year before. So I mean, that was part of it. That was part of it too. Was just that we both felt like there would be very little movement. And I think still there would be very little movement, although probably Warhammer would make its way back on the list. But
there was a thought process to rating games on a 7-point scale for just one episode. Mm-hmm. So that if a game won 2 7s, it would be considered touchdowns instead of boxcars, which is what a game gets when it gets the top score on our scale. We rate everything here at the Dukes of Dice, Sean, on a 6-point scale, 1 being bad, 6 being very, very good. And there was some reference to that on there as well. My favorite suggestion, Sean, not the one we ended up using, but my favorite suggestion was the Name Fathers, which was, hey, put some effort into it. Bring on Dan King and Suzanne Sheldon and BJ and Jeremy and all the folks have meant so much over the history of the course of the show. And that is a fantastic idea and a lovely time to do something like that. But we are very, very, very unprepared and lazy. Except when I say we, I mean just me. because you actually took one of these, and I will say, without saying what it is just yet, it came from King Everything is Splendor. It came from one of his suggestions on the guild. So thank you to King Everything is Splendor, and thank you, Sean, for actually, much like always, kind of in a throwback episode, doing all the work yet again.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, what I will say is for our first year anniversary episode, we did get a bunch of friends of the show that contributed segments. We put a lot of work into that. I think it was our second anniversary episode where Jake Bach, our buddy from Draft Mechanic.
Oh, that's one of my favorite things anyone's ever done for us. That intro was so epic.
An amazing intro. That was super, super awesome, super touching, like awesome. Just so great. And then, I think as the years have gone by, less and less fanfare for each one of these.
Maybe for the 10th. If we can make it to 10, Sean.
Yeah.
Which, for reference, I will have a nearly 3-year-old daughter at that point.
Okay.
Should things go well. So, yeah. Wild. How old would Chewie be out for our 10th anniversary episode?
So for reference, I'll have a 10-year-old and I'll have a 22-year-old.
Nice. Good job. You're very responsible.
I'm super responsible. Yeah, it's kind of wild. So Chewie had just been born, and Mariah was 13 at the time when we started the podcast.
Man, the time's a flying.
Wild stuff, Alex.
Yeah. Well, hey, we'll get to the kind of big featured thing that you did all this wonderful work for here in a bit. But hey, we do talk about games from time to time on this show, as surprising as that might be. I don't know, Sean. Do you want to talk about how you're doing? How you doing? Other than being incredibly hot in your basement right now.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm really hot. Let's talk about some games.
All right. I will start things off by talking about Nemesis. This is a game I talked about very recently, in fact.
Wait,
Sean.
What?
Yeah.
It's not like I knew about this because it was in the show notes and you mentioned you'd be talking about it again. But here I am, all shocked and surprised.
Well, yeah. Look, so I talked a lot on that last episode, and it compared, it sort of outshined Oath in a lot of ways in terms of the emergent storytelling. And what I didn't know, because you had mentioned you were just kind of okay on the game, was my one experience with Nemesis just a factor of that one game happened to be really, really good. Just happened, everything broke the right way. I didn't think so. I thought it was the systems driving it. So, ended up playing another game of this, 4-player game this time instead of 5. And I got to tell you, Sean, so far it's 2 for 2 in terms of having interesting plays that tell a movie and a story. I was playing in this particular game as the pilot. The pilot being very good at, steering the ship. My secret objective in this whole thing had nothing to do with that, though. When you start the game, you all start in basically the cryo chamber in the center of the ship, the hibernation chamber. And there's a dead body on the floor as you all wake out of hibernation. You can study that dead body and use it to determine what the aliens might be weak to. We've never gotten around to that. In fact, in both games, we haven't even studied what the aliens weak to. Not for lack of wanting to, just we end up getting sidetracked and battling aliens. Jamie in this game was Sergeant Stegmeyer. And he had a little theme song because it was Sergeant Stegmeyer punching the aliens. Because that's what he did. He just went around trying to punch these aliens, which, for the record, if you want to end the game winning it, is maybe not ideal, but also you run out of bullets pretty fast in this game. So
yeah, you do.
Yeah. In this case, my goal was to scoop up that specific dead body and have it on my person when I was safely secured inside of an escape pod or a hibernation chamber. I also had to send a signal to Earth letting them know we were coming. And the name of this was a proper burial. Basically, this person, I wanted to make sure they got their last rites properly. It was all going fine. It seemed really smooth. We were all making progress towards our objectives. And then things went haywire. Alex Schmidt backed up his wheelchair into a bunch of stuff and caused some chaos. Ended up with a larva in his belly, and that wasn't ideal. He had surgery to get it removed. There was another player, Adam, who was also on the very next turn had surgery to get it removed. But then the event card in the game basically reinserted the same larva right back into his belly, like immediately after he pulled it out. And thematically, how we thought about that was Alex had surgery to remove his, and then had accidentally swapped it with a bag of blood or bag of replacement blood that was supposed to go back into Adam to make sure he would survive the surgery. So we imagine just basically one hand removing the thing from Adam and another hand reinserting a different larva into his intestines. So that story emerged. That was one of them.
Let me ask you this. I don't think you mentioned in the last episode the infection and the screening mechanism.
Yeah. Okay. And that's another super cool part of this, which is whenever for certain situations of the game, like if you punch the aliens, you'll get a contamination card. And these contamination cards will either tell you that you're infected, or they will have words that aren't quite infected that let you know, hey, you're fine with this particular card. If you take a rest action to scan those cards, you can remove all of the non-infected ones. But if any of them scan as infected, oops, there's now a larva in your belly that you just realized was there. It's this kind of super cool color decoder type of thing. That's the best way I can describe it. You have to take separate actions to get rid of the infected cards, aka the surgery action. So you can remove all cards that are infected as well as any larva lodged in your belly. So yeah, that's that contamination infection system. In terms of other things, what was I saying? What was I going after? So yeah, Sergeant Stegmeyer punching the aliens. You had a very bad surgery, a surgery that went incredibly wrong. And then you had me, and I was doing fine for the most part. I was very cowardly. I wasn't very useful in combat. I ran out of bullets. I got the ship steered towards Earth. That was great. We had some indication that the engines were probably working, so that all was fine. The problem was I didn't scoop up the body right from the get-go because I had you start the game with 2 goals, and you don't pick which one you want until someone encounters the aliens for the first time. And so I wasn't sure I wanted that body. It takes up a big, heavy item slot. It's not the most convenient thing to be carrying around. Well, it eventually ended with the entire ship, the front of the ship, just completely being ransacked by aliens, just tearing the thing apart. I'm being chased around. I'm bleeding. I'm about to collapse, and I know I'm not going to make it. When you have a bleeding injury, you are basically taking a light wound every time you pass. So unless you fix that thing in a hurry, you are toast. And I'd already taken plenty of injuries. So I figured I'd just play it thematically at that point. I'm not going to win. I don't have any incentive to stop other people from winning. So I'm going to try and get to the comms room because I kept trying to get in there during the game and I couldn't quite make it. There was an alien in there, or I had to go a different direction or something. I finally get in there on my turn. I know I'm about to die, but I'm stuck with not enough action cards, basically too many contamination cards clogging up my hand, and only 1 card I can use for an action, and it takes 2 to send a signal to Earth. And so I bleed out right there before I can get the message sent to Earth that the aliens are coming. This is about to be a bad situation. I'm imagining my hand on the comm as I just kind of fade slowly to black. Of our 4 players, only one of them survived in one. The other 3 of us perished on that ship, and that's been consistent so far. We had a 5-player game. 2 people ended up surviving. It feels like a horror movie. It has a lot of really satisfying narrative moments. 2 games and 2 really interesting stories that came from both of them. I am in love with this game. On the 7-point Ducal scale, this is at least a 6.
It's interesting to me because this is, I mean, obviously games with a strong narrative element, you're more likely to like, but just in terms of production, mechanics, gameplay, like this is just not a typical Alex game.
Not remotely. No.
Yeah.
I'm not a big, I haven't played a ton of Awakened Realm stuff, but the one I had played, this War of Mine, I did not care for. This one I very much cared for. Mm-hmm. But you're right. It's big minis. It's not the easiest teach. Though I will say on this second play, Sean, knowing what to teach when, what's important, when to teach it. You don't have to teach the whole game mechanically. You can get to playing much sooner than you think and still have folks make interesting, informed decisions. So from that perspective, it's I wouldn't say it's an elegant game by any means, but it has so many smart design decisions that drive those interesting stories. The objective cards lending itself to interesting player behavior that doesn't seem totally rational. Okay, why don't you just get off the ship? Well, I have to do this thing. This is the thing I have to do to survive. You can have player interaction, right? I can cancel your action if we're in the same room. I can put up a door to kind of seal you back in the area where the aliens are, and fire and flames and all that fun stuff. But there isn't any direct combat. I can't literally shoot you in the back in the game. So
right.
I find it really interesting, and I love the stories that emerge from it. It's a game that feels a lot shorter than it actually is. It ends up being usually about a 2.5 to 3 hour kind of play with Teach. So yeah, I don't know what to say, Sean. It's 2 for 2, and it's rare that I would want to play that kind of a game twice, let alone really enjoy that kind of game twice. So,
right. Yeah.
Kudos to Nemesis. Yeah. It's a top 25 all time on BGG, and I think well worthy of that.
All right, so I'm going to talk about 1867, which is a game I've talked about before. It's an 18xx game, and I'm not going to talk about the game itself necessarily, sort of these little mini reviews that we do, because I have talked about it before. So just quick reminder, 18xx are these route building, shared routes, and stock game where you're investing in these train companies. You're trying to buy new, more powerful trains that can run these bigger routes, earn money for stockholders. And at the end of the game, whoever has the most money on hand and the highest value in their stock portfolio is the win. The win? They're the win. They're the winner.
They're the win.
They're the win.
Win is you.
Anyway, so yeah, there's different variations. There's different maps. There's different versions that promote the operations of these companies more, others that promote stock shenanigans. This is less stock shenanigans and more just build some good companies, run them, and then invest smartly in, to build up your stock portfolio. All right. So this was 4 players. This is me, Rory, Matt, and we have a new player, Lynn. And I'm doing very well. I'm doing very well this game. And in the 4th to last operating round, in the last stock round. So you'll have a stock round, and then you'll have 2 operating rounds. But then once the end game's triggered, it'll be a stock round and then 3 operating rounds. So in the last stock round, I make an interesting decision to start a brand new company, instead of investing in other companies that have, or they're gonna have a much higher stock value. They'll get some bumps, they'll make some money. What I've figured out here is that my stock portfolio is going to lose a little bit of value, but I'm going to get more money in payouts. I did the math and it checked out. So that should be fine. I am now, over these last 3 operating rounds, I should be in a place where I'm going to win comfortably. Okay. So we do the last 3 operating rounds. And usually at this point, most of the track has been built. There's very little left to upgrade. Really nothing changes from one operating round to the next in these final 3. Sometimes maybe some little thing, you might be able to eke out a little bit more money here or there. But for the most part, at this point, it's like 1:00 in the afternoon. We started at 8. So we're in for 5 hours, and this could take 2 more hours, or we could just kind of spreadsheet it out in 20 minutes. And that's what we usually do. So we do that. We add up the stock values, add up the money on hand, and here are the final scores. You ready for this? Matt had 5185, 5,185. Lynn had 5403. Sean in third had 5895. And then Rory pulled it out with 5902, $7. He beat me by $7. Okay. All right. A little annoying because Rory happened to win the last game too, and we weren't sure how. Nothing, we couldn't point to anything that he did anyway. But then I realized, oh my God, I should have won. So here's what happened. In operating round 2, I was trying to build a station to cut off Matt's line. Not Rory's line, but Matt's line. But the problem is Rory and Matt had equal shares in the company. So by cutting off this line, I was going to cut his revenue by at least $10 a share. Rory had, I think, 4 shares. So that would have cut Rory off by $40. And so we even said, I said, hold on, even though we were spreadsheeting, I'm like, hold on, I want to lay down this station. And, oh, wait, the company doesn't have money. to do that. I can't take out a loan to build it. That's not allowed. Oh well. But at that point I'm like, well, I've won. I'm sure I've won. But then we remembered that we had stopped paying money to the companies because it was mostly inconsequential. My company should have had 3 times the amount of money necessary to drop a station. But because we all agreed to do it so quickly, we didn't go through the full process to see what was there. And afterwards, Matt agreed with me. He's like, yeah, you won. Rory defiantly was like, if that's what you need to do to make yourself feel better. And Matt and I agreed, like, okay, we're not good enough 18xx players. We need to go through all the motions to avoid this in the future. So, Alex, what's your take? Is Rory's win with an asterisk? Is it a legitimate win, or for all intents and purposes, did I win?
So, I think to sports at a time like this, Sean, because in just about every sport, there is some sort of challenge or review procedure at this point.
Sure.
In hockey, there's a pretty robust one with offsides challenges and all that fun stuff. And I remember a situation that came up where there's a rule in the NHL where if you're offsides, and I don't need to go into the full offsides rule, and score a goal, the goal doesn't count. If you challenge, but you have to challenge it. And so if you challenge it for offsides and they determine it's onside, you get hit with a penalty. You get hit with a 2-minute penalty. So you not only got scored on, you're also down a person. There was a situation where a team challenged. They lost the challenge, but then during the intermission, they realized, oops, you should have won the challenge. So they allowed the goal to stand, but they removed the penalty off the board. Anyway, none of that really addresses this whole situation.
Okay.
But more to the point of, I think broadly speaking, there's kind of a statute of limitations on realizing something like that.
Okay. This was like 15 minutes.
I'd say that's pretty long. Like, okay. I've played plenty of games where I've been like, oh, sorry, can I take that back? Can I do this again? Hey, oops, I just realized I could have done this. Before the next person's turn is over.
Sure.
I mean, maybe in 18xx terms, this is the equivalent, right? 15 minutes is effectively that, but...
And here's the thing. Obviously, there's a little bit of sour grapes here. I'm fully aware of that. I'm 100% aware of that.
Of all the people you have to lose to in Albuquerque, Rory would probably be your least favorite to lose to in Albuquerque.
But here's what I'll say. We did take the time on that turn to say, stop. This is what I want to do. Is there anything that's going to let me do it? No, because we all collectively forgot that we hadn't paid out my company. We hadn't paid out Rory's company for these particular runs. And so the intention was clearly there. Like, I think it would have been completely different if I had said at the end of the game, oh, I totally should have built that station to cut off the route, but I didn't think of it at the time.
How is poor Rory to know? How is poor Rory to know in that moment that you've been robbed and wronged?
Well, no. So that's the interesting thing. A lot of, at least the way we've been playing, especially when we had a newer player. I mean, she's played 18xx games before, but new to the group, right? Whenever there's someone, like, it's one thing when you sit down for a game of Azul with a new player, but when you're committing to like 5 or 6 hours with someone, like, you got to kind of feel them out. And so very often we're very quick to point out, like, oh, well, you should do this. This is the better route for you. Just because, number one, it saves time. It's kind of like, you would hate this. It's kind of like Prater that we talked about last week, where people are all helping figure out the optimal thing because it speeds the game along. Also, you might have a vested interest because, hey, I own 20% of that company. So yeah, I want you to max out on this particular run. So we all just forgot that we had failed to pay out companies for certain runs that they had. Because most of the companies were fully, they had no stocks within their company, but there was just my company and Rory's company that had that. I think I had 4, he had 2. So I don't know. Anyway, curious to hear people's thoughts. I can kind of guess people are probably just be like, yeah, you lost. But
yeah, that's honestly, in hearing you tell the story, look, there have been times you've told a story like this, and I've been like, yeah, you were legitimately robbed. That's annoying. I don't know. It sounds like your company needed a better lawyer.
Here's the thing. Matt agreed with me.
Yeah.
Matt has played a ton of 18xx games. Matt, I'm happy to have Matt in my corner. So if no one else, let me put it this way: for this, I'd rather have Matt in my corner than you in my corner.
Look, I think that's true in many situations.
For most things, I suppose.
Yeah. Look, I will say this: I think it's fair to say you probably would have won or should have won. Right. But I think if you make the claim that you did win, I think that's where I have an issue with it.
That's why, can we put an asterisk on Rory's win?
I mean, if you want to, yeah, if you can remind him,
trust
me, you only won because we're bad at knowing the rules of this game.
Instead of an asterisk, Alex, what if it's one of those like double bar T's?
Oh, geez.
You know what I mean? Like they've used the asterisk, they've used like the double and the triple asterisk. So now I go into the double bar T's, if that's what they're called. I don't even know what that's what they're called. What are those called?
I don't know.
There's a name for them. I'll look it up at some point. So anyway, that's my sour grapes with 1867.
All right. Well, sorry about it, I guess. Sorry I'm not fully on your side with this one.
I mean, here's what I probably should have done. I probably should have reversed the people in the story.
Oh.
To get out any bias, right?
In some alternate universe, there's a version where you did that, and there was some way of knowing the results of that experiment. But sadly, we don't live in that universe. Nope. So anyway, very good. Well, Sean, I will talk about one more game. Just played it the other night. It's a game called Shobu. Shobu. Have you played this game, Sean?
I have not.
This is an abstract game designed by Manolis Vranis and Jamie Sajdak, published here in the U.S. by Smirk and Laughter Games, also known sometimes as Smirk and Dagger Games. I don't know which exact branch of it. It's listed on BGG as Smirk and Laughter, but anyway. It certainly fits more in the Smirk and Dagger side, I guess. This is an abstract game. It has, the components are two of these white boards that are 4x4 grids. There's a rope that goes in the middle between the two boards, and then there are 16 stones of each color. And basically, you lay out a pattern of 4 white, 4 black, 4 white, 4 black, 4 white, 4 black, 4 white, 4 black. So if I'm playing black, I'll have my pieces in front of me on the board closest to me, and then closer to me on the board across the rope. Is that layout making sense, Sean?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. The objective of Shobu is on one of the 4 boards, just one of them, to clear all 4 of your opponent's stones by pushing it all 4 of them off the board. How you do this is super tricky and a kind of a fun mirror-y type of game. So you'll take 2 actions on your turn. You'll take a passive move and an active move. Any move you take has to be in a direction, either diagonally or orthogonally, up to 2 spaces, not moving through your own stones, but basically, and for a passive move, not really moving through any or pushing any stones. So if I have a piece in the bottom right corner of my board, I can move it into to the diagonal. That's a passive move, as long as I don't run into any other stones. The active move has to take place on the opposite side of the board. So you have to do the passive move on either the white board or black board on your side of the rope, and then you do the active move. So let's say I did it on the white board. I would do the active move on one of the 2 black boards, either the one closer to me or the one further from me. And that move, I can make contact with and shove off my opponent's stones. So if you're sitting by the edge of the board, I can shove it off. The trick with the active move is it has to mirror the passive move. So if I move for my passive move diagonal to the left 2, I have to, for my active move diagonal to the left 2. It's simpler than I'm making it sound, but it's also more brain burnery and tangled than I might be making it sound. Did any of that resonate or make some amount of sense?
Yeah, it made some sense.
Basically, you have to move on one board in a way that doesn't knock your opponent off, and then on the other one of the other 2 boards, you have to move in that exact same way, but are eligible to shove their stone off the board. It's brain burnery. It's 4-dimensional chess. It's elegant, interesting. if you like abstract games, you'll like this. Abby, in no way, shape, or form would enjoy this game at all. Yeah, but that's Shobu. Give it a try. It's a very good abstract.
Okay, very cool. Well, the last thing I'm going to talk about, Alex, is the Warhammer 40,000 tournament I participated in the end of July. So it's about 2 weeks ago now. I've been mentioning it coming up in on the show for several episodes back, and it happened. Hadn't talked about in the last episode, but I figured, hey, I'll talk about it real quick here. This was awesome. It was also exhausting. It was totally exhausting. So for those that don't know or may need a refresher, I've gotten back into the Warhammer miniature, tabletop miniature hobby over the last couple months, 5 months, 6 months now. Can't remember. And playing 9th edition Warhammer 40,000. It has been about 8 years since I had played Warhammer in any real capacity, even though I've got a ton of stuff, ton of models, bunch of fully painted armies, et cetera, et cetera. So I had joined an escalation league playing these 500 point, 750 point, which are small games. And so I saw this tournament. It was the Albuquerque Reopen, which is ironic because we were reopening at the time, and I'm almost certain we're going to be back in a lockdown soon. Our numbers are quickly on the incline. But at the time, I participated in this tournament. It's 2,000 points, and I played with my Astra Militarum, which is the Imperial Guard. So years ago, they changed a bunch of names of things that was more generic, like Imperial Guard, to things that are more trademarker-ish.
Trademarkable.
Like,
merchandisable.
Yeah, like Astra Militarum. So this is this army was a labor of love 10 plus years ago, highly converted. So normally you buy a kit, you clip the things off, clean it up, put them together, slap some paint on them, boom, there you go. These guys are the Traitor Guard Sons of Sek from the Dan Abnett Gaunt's Ghost novels. Alex, you should totally read these books. Don't read the books. They're really good though. And so I did all of these crazy conversions. I added extra armor. I took certain heads and I chopped off these top knots so that there were these kind of bald heads. I needed 120 of them. I only had 50, so I had to wind up casting them in resin to make up the extra ones. There are these, you've seen these guys before. They're like the yellowish guys in one of the cases.
I think so.
You've seen them. Anyway,
okay.
Ton of work, labor of love. So now here's the thing. Games Workshop does this thing where anytime a new edition for a particular army book comes out, they kind of tone down one particular unit and they enhance another unit that they want to sell, because that's what they are. They're not really a rules company. They're a miniatures company that happens to supply rules to their games. And so in every edition, you kind of have to update your army a bit here and there to get what's going to be really, really powerful. So of all of my armies, the Astra Militarum were the ones that were closest to being competitive with the least amount of work. And so that's what I brought. However, I had painted, but I had not weathered these various vehicles. I have these like battle tanks. I have these gunships that were painted, but they weren't weathered. And so I give them this like really grimy, realistic look. I spent about 40 hours over a week getting all these things ready. Went to the tournament, 10 a.m. till about 8 p.m., 3 rounds, played 3 games. I went 1-2. I lost my first 2 games, won my last game, and I was incredibly happy with that. I used to be a really good tournament player, but having been out of the hobby as long as I have been, having been fairly, new to this edition, I went in and saying, I will be pretty happy if I have a good showing in my matches and if I could at least win one, which is what I did. Now, I'm going to want to do better for the next one, obviously, but I felt like I learned a lot. And also I watch this YouTube channel called Tabletop Titans. They have all these live battle reports that they do. They've got a separate hobby channel. I feel like I learned a lot from them. This game is drastically different than the game I played 8 years ago. And so I feel like I learned a lot. So first I played against the Necrons, which are these robotic Terminator looking dudes. close-ish game. I'd played this guy before in our Escalation League, and I know what mistakes I made, and I can correct those. The next game I played against Dark Angels, who are a chapter of Space Marines. I had, in my first turn, I wiped out half of his army. First turn of shooting, just wiped him out. It was incredible. And then that was about it. Because from then on, this game is, so earlier editions of the game, you just want to wipe out your opponent. Like, that's how you played the game. Just kill stuff. This game is much more, it's much more of a puzzle. There are these objectives that you have, these primary objectives of holding certain points on the map. There are these secondary objectives that you're trying to achieve. And so you could have your entire army wiped off the map and still win the game because you were playing the objectives better. So we got to a point where I was unable, there's this one unit of Deathwing Terminators that I could not get off this one point. No matter what, there was one dude for like 4 turns. There was one dude that I could not kill despite putting the right amount of firepower into him. It was really frustrating. I lost that game. It was pretty close. And then in the third round, I played against the Space Wolves, another chapter of Space Marines, who are these, they're like, some of them are half werewolf, and they're like kind of a Viking theme to them. And I did win that game. That I was pretty happy with that. But overall, I had a great time. People loved how my army looked. I got a ton of compliments on my army. There was a Facebook post. Someone said, "Hey, your Imperial Guard looked amazing." That's something I get a lot of pride and joy from, is painting up really good looking armies and having people enjoy them. So it was awesome. It was a lot of fun. There was another tournament scheduled for Labor Day weekend, but because of our numbers, the organizer canceled it. So I totally support that decision. So that's kind of a bummer, but yeah. So I'm working on my Necrons right now. And then the new book for Thousand Suns, Chaos Space Marines, they just got a brand new book for them. They were the first army that I built and painted, so I'm going to be revisiting them soon and updating them. So I'm really enjoying this, Alex, being back in the hobby. It's good times.
Nice. Hey, I'm happy for you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to play it at all, but...
Well, we'll talk about that later.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Interesting. I'll play Blood Bowl with you.
Well, okay. Yeah, we'll talk. So that was my my Warhammer 40,000 tournament.
All right, very cool. Well, Sean, do you want to set up what we're talking about, or we want to do this after the break?
Let's do it after the break.
All right. See you after the break. Well, Sean, the Game Toppers 3.0 Kickstarter is in the books, and thanks to a whole bunch of backers, Game Toppers had a heck of a Kickstarter campaign, more than $800,000 raised to get more Game Toppers, new features, all sorts of fun stuff headed folks' way.
Wait, did you say 800,000?
I did say that amount.
Yes. Oh my goodness. That's a ton of money.
Sean, did you make it in time? Are you part of that group?
It's over? It's over? Like over?
No, it's done. I'm sorry you missed your window. But the good news, Sean, is that if you keep an eye on the Game Toppers LLC website, the late pledge manager should be open in the near future. Take a look there, and you can still get in on all the fun, get the newest features, get yourself a Watson, or get yourself, I don't know, whatever you want. Awesome game mats, rails, something cool to really take your gaming experience to the next level without getting a fully dedicated gaming table, which is exactly what Game Toppers is all about. Check them out, GameToppersLLC.com, because if it ain't a showstopper, it ain't a Game Topper.
All right, Alex. Well, it is our 7-year anniversary episode, and we were kind of stumped for what should we do. So we put it to the guild, and as always, the guild comes through. There were a lot of fantastic ideas, but the one that we both independently latched onto was King Everything is Splendor's suggestion of go back, listen to episode 1, 255 episodes ago, maybe play some clips, provide some commentary. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to do that. So I've got 20-ish clips. Some of them are fairly short. Some are a little bit longer, like a minute-ish. Things that I pulled out that I thought were noteworthy, things that I thought were interesting, things that show you the difference between then and now. And so what I did over the last week, I did this over 2 or 3 sessions. I just went through and I listened to the episode. Oh, I cleaned it up quite a bit, Alex.
Oh, good. I was gonna mention that.
The audio was bad. So it's cleaned up a bit. What you hear is a slightly better version of the actual episode 1. Maybe that's what I'll do one day, Alex. I'll go back and I'll remaster the back catalog.
No.
No.
Are you gonna sub out different characters? Is like the friendly Shoggoth gonna get a CGI update?
Yeah, totally. But yeah, I went back and I listened, and as I was listening, I pulled out clips. And then I've got a bunch of them that we're gonna queue up, we're gonna play. I might have something brief to kind of say to set up a particular clip, and then we'll have some commentary.
Sean, can I say something up front here?
Sure.
Which is the last time I listened to this episode was, I think, a year or 2 years ago.
Okay.
And I recall being shocked at how listenable I found it. I was worried
really?
I was going to be like cringing, and maybe that'll be the case as we listen to it now. But I recall it being better than I thought it was going to be.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway.
All right. Well, let's get this started here. Let me pull this up. I got all these clips lined up. All right. So this is the original introduction to the show. So it's got the music. We've had the same music from the beginning of the show, and this is how your intro sounded, Alex. And yeah, tell me what you think.
Coming to you from the Duchy in the Duke City, it's the Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board, card, and role-playing games. Today, the Dukes review Istanbul, and they'll tell you their top 10 games of all time. Later, they'll put Tzolk'in, the Mayan calendar, on trial. And now, the Dukes of Dice.
No Albuquerque.
No, I figured everyone knew where the Duke City was, and there wasn't a need. Yeah, reminiscent, there's several things you'll hear in there. One is that it's, maybe not as smooth as the typical intro experience might be. I mean, we didn't have the flow yet. I will say, Game Court has been long absent from the show. It was sort of part of, I guess we had the concept of, all right, well, you're a lawyer, I'm a reporter. We're going to do a news segment, and then we're going to do a hard-hitting law segment with Game Court.
Well,
and
hold on.
Wait,
let's take this slowly, Alex. We got a
whole... Oh, sorry.
We got a whole episode to go through.
All right.
This is so we're just the intro, just the intro. Any thoughts on that intro?
Well, it wasn't great. I'll also add in the occasionally part was missing from role-playing games, which I think indicated our ambition to maybe have that be a little bit more balanced than it ended up being.
Right. So
that's what I got. What about you?
Yeah, no, it's interesting, the Albuquerque, because your Albuquerque had become so iconic, and it's just not there. I'm
St. Louis is St. Louis is nowhere to be found in that episode.
Well, yes, that's also true. That would have been very strange for you to just mention St. Louis.
Yeah.
Just because.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, after the intro, then I lead us off, and here I am, Alex, in all my glory. Welcome, everybody, to the Dukes of Dice Episode 1 podcast. Welcome, Alex.
Welcome, Sean.
It's exciting to be here in the Duchy.
The Duchy in the Duke City.
Okay, this is current Sean. Can you tell how exciting it is?
Oh, no. Oh,
yeah.
We sound like we're at the start of like a CEO conference, or like at a roundtable discussion. Oh, well, welcome, Sean. Thanks for coming.
Yes.
So glad to have you. We're here to talk about commodities today. That's right, Sean. That's the kind of tone we had there.
So I've got more here, because this is a wild. I'm still shocked that this next like opening banter is how we started the show. I completely forgot. Like it's ridiculous. But here's what I want people to have the context of. At this point, we had one microphone, and we had to lean in and out when we wanted to speak. And you will hear so much noise, so much chair creaking as we're leaning in and out of this microphone. What I will say, it was an ease to or a breeze to edit, because there was very little crosstalk, right? Like, I mean, it was much easier when we were in the same room.
Step on each other. Yeah.
See, we just did it. We literally just did it.
I made your life harder just now.
Yeah, I'll leave it in. Just just for the example. All right. So here's the opening banter. This is gonna be a little bit of a longer portion of this clip, but I find it odd. And there's also this early on a tangential Dune reference, although I never say the word Dune.
In the Duke City. So that's what we're calling it. We've got this whole branding thing where we're Dukes and there's a Duchy.
You're the chair creak. I am cringing a little bit. I hope you are.
I'm cringing at that part, but also the fact that it didn't sound like just a chair. It sounded like we were on a pirate ship.
Yeah,
like
totally.
Just a creaky pirate ship.
All right, let's continue.
We talked about some sort of peons, but that doesn't seem like a good thing for listeners.
Feudal systems are a little in the past for us.
Well, I think eventually when mankind spreads out to the stars, democracy is not a sustainable model. So I think that's somewhere in our future.
Actively talking about the overthrow of the U.S. government here on the very first podcast. The Dukes of Dice.
I do things big, Alex. I do things big.
Oh, my goodness.
I think at that point I was a little worried I'd get fired from my news job.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It was, I don't know that our opening banter has gotten that much better.
It's better than that.
I would hope so. I would certainly hope so. But yeah, lots of creaking. Lots of creaking. All right. Let's see. This next one. Oh, this is okay. Talk about cringe. So, Alex, what was my main goal early on?
You wanted us to be part of the Dice Tower network was the initial goal. Yeah.
Right. And so right off the bat, this is still a couple minutes into the episode. I'm just doing, I guess name dropping isn't the right thing, but I'm just mentioning here. Listen.
I love hobbies. Board games have not always been my hobby, but there's always been something. And there's some sort of obsession, some sort of obsessive compulsiveness.
You have an acquisition disorder. Let's just face it.
I do. If you're not familiar with what acquisition disorder is, you guys should check out the Secret Cabal podcast. They're members of the Dice Tower Network.
I don't know why I find that so amusing.
Just a little shout out.
Yeah, just a little bit. Also, that's the first mention of acquisition disorder, which I've got a couple clips of that, of your use of that a little bit later.
Okay. All right.
Which is going to lead then into your 2 acquisition disorder uses.
I should mention, by the way, that has since been retired as a term I use on the show.
Yeah, and you made that quite clear on the show. Can you explain why? Well, I queue up.
I don't remember my exact justification. I think it was just that. One, it could have been that I was actively working for Big Cardboard.
I don't think you were.
I became a member of the board game establishment. But I think it was also that it came off as, I think, pejorative to listeners in a way, because so many of them love collecting. And quite frankly, I benefit from when people collect the way that they do. So I think it was some mix of that. And also it was just kind of annoying and didn't think it sounded great anymore. So I'm really stoked to hear this one now.
Okay, here we go.
Sean, are you getting that one?
Oh, I'm getting that one. I am getting that one. Again,
acquisition disorder.
let me play that back.
Again,
acquisition disorder.
Now, wait. I remember. So it did not end up there by the time it was retired. It was more like acquisition disorder, like something like that.
That was. But for whatever reason, that was the initial take. Acquisition disorder.
Brutal.
That's super brutal. Okay, so
wait, Sean, you have to tell me this legally. You have to legally tell me this. Is that the most cringy moment that I'm about to have as we listen back through these?
Oh, what great timing, Alex.
Oh no.
What great timing. So this is still early in the episode where we're kind of explaining to listeners who we are. One of the things that we're about to do is give our top 10 games of all time, just so people kind of have an understanding of who we are as gamers. But here's your explanation of why we're doing what we're doing. You ready for this, Alex?
So as you can tell from hearing Sean, he is, I'd say, the more obsessed. If you're looking at the two, you have the master and you have the student in a sense. Because I am a lot newer to board games, I don't have nearly the kind of collection, And I think that'll be good. I think we'll have that sort of diversity of angles that we can bring to you. And you'll see, I think, as we're about to get into it here with our top 10 list, there's a big difference in terms of how we see games and what we like to play.
No, absolutely. And I think that brings a little bit of a balance. I mean, we don't necessarily agree on a lot of games. We agree on some, and that's great.
Yeah.
So in what sense has that changed, would you say?
So what's interesting is there was always this thought that we would influence each other over the course of plays. We started off in a very different place, game taste-wise. And look, there are certainly, I'm not an 18xx fan. That's not a type of game I'm likely to get into. I don't like GMT games as much. You're far more into Magic the Gathering. But when it's come to review games on the show, there was always this fear that our opinions would kind of converge because we were at the same table. So when I moved to St. Louis, I thought that was a good chance in an experiment to see, do we see games super differently now that we're in different places? And the truth of the matter is, no. Like, if anything, I keep having these moments of, like, with Oath, where I was stunned that we saw that game about the same way. It doesn't mean we haven't had discrepancies since, but more often than not, we end up on the same page. So I get what we were trying to go for. We kind of saw that as a theme or, something we could hang our hat on, but it didn't really come to pass completely. I think we tend to agree more than we disagree, especially these days.
I feel like we were early on trying to come up with something that set us apart from other podcasts.
Oh, I was fixated on that.
Yeah.
I was absolutely fixated on, we have to have something that makes us unique, or else this doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. So, yeah.
Yeah. So the next quote, or next clip rather, is kind of interesting considering where we've both come as gamers with this particular designer. We had, let me let the clip play.
In Castles of Burgundy, it kind of doesn't matter what you roll. There's always something you can do. It's also a game where there's a set number of rounds that's going to last that long. You feel like you're building something. You feel like you're growing something as you go. And there are a lot of different strategies and paths to victory. And I think it balances out really well. I've had a lot of fun with that one.
It is great. I actually just picked it up in a Board Game Geek math trade. And it's actually my one and only Stefan Feld game that I've played or owned. And I just want to go out and pick them all up now.
Oh, wow. Oh, man. Yeah.
Isn't that something?
That was prophetic. That was absolutely prophetic for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. It's interesting because he's been one of my favorite designers. I prefer the earlier, like, Feld's up to like 2012 ish. I haven't been super crazy about some of his later games. Raquel loves Feld, and we do a Feldbiss episode, every year. It's interesting to hear that was a time before I knew anything about Bora Bora or Trajan or Macau, and before I had gone to great lengths to track some of the out of print ones down. It's interesting to me. It's just interesting. I don't know. I just thought it was kind of cool.
It's interesting, the arc of Feld for you, right? Because you go from, I got to catch them all, to, oh, this one kind of disappointed me a little bit, which has been more the trend of the more recent releases. So, though amazing to hear that kind of early love and what it manifested into. That's cool.
So this next thing is about Pathfinder, the adventure card game, which I think is just, it's interesting because it was, I don't know, it was just a great shared experience, a great shared gaming experience. And we talked about it quite a bit. I don't know that I've had anything come close to that.
Sean, I will tell you, in terms of us together, the only thing I'd say that comes close to that would be us going to Unrivaled.
Okay.
As a shared experience.
Yeah, that took a trip to Vegas and a bunch of weird stuff happening.
Yeah.
So, but here's us talking about Pathfinder.
You get invested in these guys.
No, absolutely. And it's going to be hard when we start playing the next base set, Skull and Shackles, which is supposed to be... I know it's going to be at Gen Con.
Right.
Well, Gen Con's happening now when people are listening to this, or when this is released at least. And it's going to be really hard going back to one of those Joe Schmo characters when Ezrin, the wizard, is a veritable god. He just rains down fire. And
oh boy,
when he runs into the random leftover goblin from Adventure Pack 1, it's just sad.
Well, so Sean, I will throw in there that's a good reminder possibly as to why Nemesis has clicked so well for me. Because at Pathfinder, the adventure card game, does not explicitly state in some sort of endgame story card, hey, Ezrin, the god amongst men has risen. It doesn't. It was an emergent gameplay moment that came up from him being so absolutely overpowered and insanely powerful that it almost was an ominous ending when we succeeded the way we succeeded in that game. So that was a great example of emergent storytelling and that theme coming into play and really feeling the characters. So yeah, I guess it's a bit of a surprise that I like Nemesis as much, but maybe not so much if you listen back to that moment being referenced.
Well, I think that's the thing. If there is that sort of emergent narrative, that can certainly overcome other potential issues with the game for you. I think that's definitely the case. It is sad, and so there was the original box for Pathfinder Adventure card game. I'm completely blanking. Rise of the Rune Lords. There we go. That we played through. Then we started Skull and Shackles, but we just never continued with it. There was another one that came out. I own it, but I think the hard part for me is like the almost the fear of not having that same experience in subsequent games, and like the letdown of that. And I'd almost rather not risk it. But also, like, if I were to play this with somebody else, like you and I got to a point, because there was a ton of setup and breakdown, ton of moving pieces in this game, even though it's like 14 decks of cards, right, that you're dealing with, plus this big box. There's all this organization that has to go on. We were quick, like we were super quick, and we were very efficient in terms of that setup and breakdown. I just don't know. I just don't know. Alex, you've ruined me for other Pathfinder adventure card game plays.
So I'll say this kind of thing can happen, for instance, with a game like Scythe for me. I love Scythe, but there's a little bit of a curse in not having ever lost that game still. Because I haven't played it in years. And I love that game to death. I just need to lose at some point, and then I can probably love it even more. And Sean, you just I don't know what the equivalent of that would be. I guess I need to die? I don't know.
Okay. What?
Anyway, Pathfinder, I think we had some other moments of gaming chemistry, but the extent to which we played that for hours and just dove headfirst into that game, I think was really the foundation of the gaming relationship we had. Yeah.
No, I agree 100%. So yeah, if you haven't played Pathfinder the Adventure card game, it's worth a look. It's certainly worth a look. All right. So at this point, we've been well into our top 10 games. You've now reached your number 2 game, which at the time was Puzzle Strike. I hated Puzzle Strike with a passion. I hated it. For some reason, though, in the discussion on the episode, I was like, oh no, it's not a bad game. It's just, I don't know. Take a listen.
For all of this agreement, and then we get to the very top of the list, and then we get into trouble. My number 2 is a game that is probably less known than a lot of the ones on this list, Puzzle Strike. Puzzle Strike is an awesome game. My younger brother Ben introduced it to me not too long ago. It's effectively a deck builder. It uses chips. It doesn't really use cards, and that's actually a pet peeve for Sean. I'm fine with that because I can't shuffle, which is a little ironic for someone into board and card games, not to be able to shuffle to save my life. This uses chips. There is a ton of depth to this one, and it's not a game that takes a ton of time. It's in that half-hour, 45-minute range, which is, I think, a sweet spot. Another quick iterator, but one where you have different characters, and those different characters are enter into your starting deck. You have a starting deck of 10 ships. 3 of them are going to be made up of your character. So your strategy is going to be heavily determined. How you play this game is determined not only by the chips in the bank, but also by which character you picked. There's a ton of depth. There's an expansion for this that I don't even have yet that doubles all of that. 10 new characters, a bunch of new chips. There's another expansion on top of that with a strategy book, randomizer cards, things like. I love this game, and I wish people here, I wish Sean loved it more, because I'd get it to the table a lot, because anytime I suggest it, I just get this dirty look. And I don't think it's because you hate it, but I think it's kind of become, at this point, almost funnier to hate it and to have me not play it.
So I think I cut this out, but yeah, I was like, yeah, it's not a bad game. I don't know. So it's interesting because Puzzle Strike is very much more of what you would expect to be a Sean game and not an Alex game. But I couldn't stand it.
So I did get the expansion. I still own both Puzzle Strike and Puzzle Strike Shadows.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I still have them.
I thought you got rid of them.
I think I still have them. I think they made the move. They've been in the to sell bit pile for a good amount of time. Maybe next time I make it out to a Geekway, they'll be moved on and shuffled onto someone else's collection. But I think I still have them in the basement. Maybe not. I don't know. I'll check that out later.
But it fell. I think it fell off. Was it the next year or the year after?
Yeah, it didn't last. It was not long for the list. Not long for the top 10 list. I think, just other things surpassed it. My gaming senses got sharper. I recall really enjoying it, but then I also recall coming back to it a few years later and just finding the teach not so pleasant. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, anyway.
All right, so this is another clip coming up here of the then versus now. And so one thing I need people to understand, my youngest was born in April. And in August of the year she was born, I said, hey, Alex, let's start a board gaming podcast. I've got a 4-month-old. I've hardly slept. And that was the time to start a board gaming podcast. She's now 7 years and 4 months, because she's always going to be 4 months older than the podcast. And so this is kind of interesting, especially with you having a baby on the way. Let's take a listen.
It's like Colby from Plaid Hat just said, here, for just being a good guy, here's a free game.
Another name
that you paid for.
That I paid for.
At a different time.
9 months ago. It's almost like a baby that I have a 4-month-old and I have a 3-day-old. That's Dead of Winter. It is.
Which one are you more proud of? Don't answer that question.
No.
Pleading the fifth.
Raquel's going to listen, so I don't want to answer that.
Okay.
Raquel, in fact, did not listen.
She didn't listen to that episode.
She may have listened to the first episode. That's probably if she listened to that was probably the only one that she listened to.
I will note, Sean, if I'm not mistaken, Dead of Winter was the next review.
I believe it was either our second or our third review.
It was early on, but yeah, you kind of hinted at that, and we're super stoked on receiving that game at the time, obviously. Yeah, a little baby reference there. Were you were pretty used to it at that point, I would think, though, 4 months in.
Oh, okay. Let's check back. In
boy,
January, February, and tell me how used to it you are.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? There I was with a newborn. You're about to have a newborn. The differences in what 7 years can do for you.
Wait, so
how far away? Let me ask you this: how far away in your mind? Put aside significant other, but just with the right significant other, how far away in your mind were you 7 years ago from having a baby? Like if you had been dating Abby 7 years ago.
Oh, see, that's so I don't know how to answer that.
Yeah.
What I can tell you though is I was not dating Abby.
Yes.
7 years ago. I have a ridiculous Jillian update, which I will leave for after we get off of this episode, Sean.
Okay.
Anyway, at the time, I think if you had asked my significant other would have said like 3 years, 4 years, in that ballpark. I'm trying to think if the relationship had ended by that point, though. So 7 years ago would have been 2014. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that relationship was over about 2 years and change after this episode started. And in fact, Sean, among other things, this was a non-significant factor, this podcast, in that relationship falling apart. I've said this before, I think, but effectively, this show were sort of the other woman, because we were doing it weekly, which was nuts. There was the time spent getting the plays in, and then there was the time spent recording week after week after week after week. And boy, did Jillian not enjoy that. And in fairness, I don't think Abby would necessarily enjoy that if that were the case today.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. There needed to be some life rebalancing that to occur, I think, for Baby to make sense. I don't know if I would have said 7 years. I think I probably would have said more like 5 at the time, though.
Interesting.
Yeah. How old were you? I'm trying to remember I know when your birth date is.
Mm-hmm.
What year were you born?
I was born in 81.
Okay.
So I was 33.
Yeah.
I was 33 when Chewie was born.
Okay. All right. So what's interesting kind of temporally
32,
with this podcast.
32 technically. Because she's,
okay.
32 technically.
32
when she was born.
Technically. Oh, when she was born. Yes. When she was born, you turned 33 by the time the podcast started. I get it. Okay.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting is time-wise, I am not as old as you. This is just the age difference between us. I'm not as old now as you were at the start of the podcast.
Oh, wait, you're not?
No.
Oh, yeah, you're not. Yeah, no, you're not.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Huh. Yeah, isn't that weird?
That is weird.
Man, you're old.
Yeah, trust me. Oh, yeah. Oh, my goodness. I would go to a 40K tournament. This is apropos because of the next clip. But I would go to a 40K tournament and I'd play 3 rounds all day, standing on my feet, and I'd be ready to play something else again, like ready to go. After this last 40K tournament, I was sore for days. Days. It was rough. All right, but speaking of Warhammer and other lifestyle games, when we started the podcast, I wasn't playing Magic. I wasn't playing Warhammer. Let's have a listen here.
The new Fantasy Flight LCG Warhammer 40,000 Conquest. I'm a big fan of the Warhammer universe. I've got like 7 miniature armies that are fully painted. They're just sitting in storage containers.
When's the last time you played with any of them?
Oh God, like a year and a half, 2 years ago at least. I can't stand the last 2 editions.
Well, and this is something you were talking about too, and another thing that kind of came up as part of this with Armada. Lifestyle games.
Yeah, so
that was a good article talking about how there's just only so much room.
Yeah, so over the course of my gaming career, I started off playing Magic in 94. I played that pretty heavily till about 2000, and then shortly after that, I had dabbled in miniatures, but then around 2001, I got really into the Warhammer. Pretty much every miniature system that Games Workshop ever produced, I have owned at least 1, if not 2 armies of. Plus then Privateer Press games, War Machine and Hordes. There were few games that came out between 2000 and 2006 where I didn't at least have some of the miniatures or the rulebook for. And it was definitely a lifestyle, and it took a lot of time to go to the message boards, to stay up on that stuff, to paint, to build, to go to tournaments, to build lists. And the board game hobby, I think I still put the same amount of time into that hobby, but it's a little bit more diverse in terms of I'm playing a ton of different games. And it gets frustrating though, because like with Castles of Burgundy, I am sad that I didn't get to play it as much because I got Russian Railroads and Caverna like 2 weeks after, and now I just want to play those. But no judgment on miniature players, hardcore Magic players. I think that's great, but it's definitely a lifestyle.
Yikes!
What's old is new again. You're back. You're back, baby.
I guess. I mean, it's definitely true. You have very very limited hobby time. And yeah, it is interesting that as much as we have been cult of the new when it comes to board games, because for the podcast we have to, right? Now here I am spending a lot of time on Magic, a lot of time on Warhammer, and really becoming proficient in those things instead of just dabbling in a bunch of different things. I don't know. It's interesting. It's all, I mean, at that point, I don't think I don't think I had in my mind that I would ever get back into Magic in any meaningful way. There were a couple times, so I got back into Magic in 2018 when Magic the Gathering Arena came out, the online client. And in between the start of the podcast in 2018, I would go to maybe once a year, I'd go to a pre-release event. And that was just like, that was enough. That was fine. I didn't want to get back into the game. I didn't want to do anything like that. I pretty much thought I was done except for that. And I think probably the same with miniatures, because I remember when we started playing Descent, I painted up my Descent set, and I remembered being out of practice painting, and it took me like twice as long to paint. And that was kind of frustrating to me. And that was kind of, I said to myself, I don't know that I can ever go back to miniatures at this point because I'm too slow. Although now I feel like I'm back where I was in terms of proficiency and speed and skill-ish. So it's interesting. It's interesting how much can change in 7 years. Speaking how much can change in 7 years, Alex.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on solo games right now?
I found myself slightly more open to them, but I'm still broadly not a solo player.
Sure. And I would say that I love solo games, especially tends to be war games that are not necessarily intended to be solo, but can be played, two-handed. Anyway, let's listen to this.
This just funded on Monday, and I thought it was so interesting. It's a game called Hostage Negotiator. It's a solitaire game. It's a solo board game, a game where you play the role of a hostage negotiator, talking to a varying degree of different people, trying to keep them from killing their hostage, or hostages, I should say. There's multiple hostages. Got really good buzz, really good reviews. A lot of people have tried 100 playthrough challenges to see how it goes. And I thought about chipping in on it because it struck me as interesting. And then I kind of had to take a step back because I don't play board games to play solo.
Yeah, it's it's interesting. They actually just missed the stretch goal to add in the trader mechanic.
Oh, such a bad joke.
Thank you. No, solo games, I don't have anything against playing a game solo. There are a lot of games that I'll break out by myself when I'm first learning the rules, so that way it's not a miserable experience for the people that I'm teaching. There have been times when we've muddled through the rules at the last minute, and I don't enjoy doing that. So I like going through a game on my own sometimes, especially if it's a little bit more complicated. But it just seems weird to pick up a game that you can only play solo.
Well, that didn't hold up well.
Yeah, no. Well, I will say broadly, I still agree with that. Broadly. There are exceptions.
You agree with what I said, or you agree with what you were saying?
What I was saying. My opinion is similar. Your opinion's definitely different, right? You've definitely gotten far more into the solo side than that would indicate.
Yeah.
So I will. What was also super interesting about this is they just Shut Up and Sit Down just did a big hostage negotiator review not too long ago.
Yeah, I saw that, and I was like, "That's weird." And that's like they don't always. Oh, hey, we're name dropping again.
Yeah.
Look at that. Well, I was about to go into this whole thing about Shut Up and Sit Down, but I don't want to be a cringy name dropper.
So I will say I played Hostage Negotiator at Dice Tower Con, which was kind of my first Dice Tower Con, a very formative experience for me because that's where I got introduced to Baseball Highlights 2045, which you won't hear because I didn't know of its existence at this time.
Yeah.
But I played it and it was good, but it didn't motivate me to necessarily buy it. The Shut Up and Sit Down review kind of was like, oh, maybe that's interesting. But then ultimately I'm like, no, I don't think so. So I'm still mostly out on solo games, but there have been things that have broken through that don't fit that. For you, yeah, wildly different.
So think about it, Alex. At this point in your life, in this episode 1, you are 11 months away from learning about the existence of Baseball Highlights.
Oh.
What I mean, can you like? Do you wish that you could have? Well, I guess it came out at that time, right? It came out right before.
I don't know. It released around then. Yeah. I think it might have technically been a 2014 release, but I don't know that for sure.
So I think of it the same way with like miniatures. I'm like, man, if I had been painting these last 7 years, like I'd have so much more stuff. All those missed opportunities.
Oh, well, you can't go back. You can't change the past, Sean. You got to live in the now.
So Alex, at this point in the episode, we're about to review our first review game, Istanbul, which was, didn't that win the Kennerspiel that year? I think it won it.
It did win the Kennerspiel.
Up against Concordia.
Correct.
So Alex, you typically will do the intro to a review, like the kind of like the little stinger before the music, before the rules overview. Let's see how that went. It's time for a Dukes of Dice game review. Today, the Dukes of Dice are reviewing Istanbul, the 2014 Kennerspiel des Jahres winner, published by AEG and designed by Rudiger Dorn. Okay, so we got a lot to break down there. A lot to break down. So first, I don't know if you could tell, but there was this like stupid echo on my voice that I added.
Oh yeah.
And it was just very generic, right? Just super generic. And what's interesting is like we definitely turned hard into you kind of doing the intro stuff, doing transitions, wrapping things up, just because you've got a better knack for it, right?
I mean, I always get those intros to games right on the very first take.
Oh, perfect. Always.
Every
always
single
perfect.
time. Yeah.
So here's the interesting thing. At this point, I had pre-recorded the rules, and there was a couple other things I pre-recorded too. For whatever reason, I had in my mind I wanted certain things pre-recorded. Now that whole intro, it sounds kind of scripted. Like the rules overview. It sounds kind of scripted. Oh no, it was not scripted. I came down and I was recording in the basement, so it's like 5 minutes of recording, and it took me like an hour and a half.
Oh,
because
no.
I didn't script it out. I would like say something, like I'd have it in my mind and I'd say it and then I'd correct it and then I'd refine it. Oh man, it was a disaster. It was so rough.
Do you still script? I don't actually get to see this part of the process, or do you feel natural enough where you can just kind of jump in?
No. So I script 1 out of 10 rules overviews. Like because number one, it takes time up front, right? They do seem to be a little bit tighter and cleaner, a little less meandering. And so I think my preference is if I could script those rules overviews, on a regular basis, I would. And I probably should. But yeah, and I think I did that the first 2 episodes, and then I was like, nope, I'm not doing that anymore. Not that, again, the scripting is much faster. Like I could script a rules overview in probably 30 minutes, depending on the game. But it was like an hour and a half of me like re-recording the same part over and over again. And then it was a nightmare to edit, because I'd be like, oh, that was the take. Okay, that was a good take. And then I'd be like, nope, it was actually this one. It was awful. It was super, super awful. All right. So I've got another clip that it was a bad transition. Like you were just, I'm not going to play it, but you were just like, well, that's our review. Let's go to the next segment.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So again, this is the same theme of here I am pre-recording stuff, including intros for the show or intros for segments. And you brought up the Game Court segment earlier. Why don't you tell everybody what that was?
Oh, it was an attempt to, quote unquote, set ourselves apart and also tie in thematically to who we were. I think that was the whole thrust or theme of it was, we'll do a news segment. That's important because I'm a news guy. And then we'll do this some sort of lawyer themed segment. And because we had enough differences on games at the time, it wasn't so far-fetched to think that we just disagree on things a ton forever. But we didn't have vehement or interesting enough disagreements to make this a regular segment. And so it sort of became sparser and sparser. And then it's been pretty much dead for a very long time at this point. So that was the gist of it, though.
Yeah, I think we only did like 2 or 3
official ones. Yeah, I think we've referenced like, oh, is this going to be a game court?
Yeah,
when we're way far apart on a game, but no. Anyway,
so here's the intro to Game Court.
Today on trial is Tzolk'in the Mayan calendar. The Dukes will discuss the merits and flaws of the game in Game Court. Defending Tzolk'in is Duke Sean. And now, for the prosecution, here's Duke Alex.
My favorite part of that just now was that you sort of had an intro, like just a little bit from the intro, like what the intro would become. Like, and now, like you had a little bit of that going in there.
Sure.
And now, like just a little bit of that, like, in there. Oh, Sean.
Rough. Super, super rough. Now, what we're about to hear is your opening arguments. And I think this is like classic Alex. This is very much Alex on point on doing his Alex thing.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board gaming court, I'm just a gamer. Your newfangled games with their gears and their worker placement, they frighten and they confuse me. Tzolk'in frightens and confuses me. It is a confusing game.
Hold on, let me interrupt. Let me interrupt real quick. Can you tell what that's a reference to? Can you tell
It's
everyone
a reference to it's a reference to an SNL sketch with Phil Hartman.
Yep.
Unfrozen Caveman Lawyer.
Yeah. Phil Hartman. All right, continuing.
My opening statement is really simply that. I'm not going to go too much into it because I kind of have to have Sean set the stage a little bit for why he loves this one so much, so I can kind of pick it apart. So the prosecution, not knowing what it's doing at all, being the non-attorney in this, immediately rests and then prays.
Okay, procedurally, you don't want to rest.
Oh my goodness.
You just want to defer.
Oh, okay.
I'm deferring my opening statement.
This is typical Alex in that I basically was saying, hey, Sean, I think you should do all the work at least for a bit here.
Right.
And then I'll jump in. I think it was also reflective of I didn't really prepare anything. So, yeah, that was quintessential me, for sure.
Yeah. So then we continue with Game Court on Tzolk'in, and it's really what you said, how there was no like vehement fighting about the game. You were just like, yeah, it's not a bad game. I just don't like it. And it was not good. But here's something interesting. And I think, we've kind of shown things that this is Alex's makeup. And here's Sean's makeup. Here's my makeup. And that perfectly describes me as a board gamer and also as someone who, the kind of personality necessary to play miniatures games and Magic and things like that. So let's listen to this.
I also have painted gears. You're not
You also have a second copy of this game. Let's be clear about how much you love this game. You have a second copy of this game mounted in a shadow box on the wall with 4 different players playing 4 different strategies with the score track updated, with the resources set up. That is dedication. So I'm not going to dispute dedication.
Yeah. I mean, that's just me.
You still have that, right?
Oh yeah. No, I've still got it. I need to repair the back. There's problems with the back. But anyway, that's just sort of me, the weirdness that is Sean, I suppose.
I mean, look, I was impressed with it at the time because I don't think there will ever come a point. So look, Abby and I moved into this place. Wonderful. I haven't done anything to decorate this office that I spend so much time in. I don't think there's a chance you would have this as your office and not have something up. Some sort of personalized touch, some sort of labor of love, and it's just not me. But it is absolutely you to kind of buy a whole second copy of a game and turn it into an art piece. Impressive. I wish I had that level of dedication, craftsmanship, skill, passion, all that fun stuff. At the time, money, but I don't. So anyway.
All right, and speaking more about Tzolk'in here,
give it a chance.
Buy something else.
Give it a chance because it is well worth it.
Buy Russian railroads.
It is 15 on the Board Game Geek. I just said the Board Game Geek.
Like I'm
an old man that doesn't understand how the internet works. On the interwebs, the emails.
Yes.
Well, Alex, how the mighty have fallen So in 7 years, talking about what can happen in 7 years, Zolkin has fallen from, what did I say, 15?
15, yeah.
It's fallen 30 spots to 45.
Ooh, still in the top 50 is pretty good though.
Yeah. No, I think that's really solid. I think that's definitely, definitely solid.
Sean, I will say, I haven't played Zolkin since.
Well,
and I'm curious.
Not surprised?
Well, yeah, but I'm curious if I would have a different reaction to it now. Taste-wise. It has certainly been long enough. It's been long enough where there would be a legitimate... that would be, I think, if I ever got a play-in of it, a very interesting Duke's octuple, some crazy number take. Just looking way back on this thing that I trashed a long time ago. I don't know. Anyway.
I think you would enjoy it. I think you would enjoy it now much more than you did 7-8 years ago.
I think it's likely. Yeah.
So, okay, here is, so we're done with Game Court. We've wrapped up the episode. Here's our outro, which is amusing.
Well, Alex, I think that's going to bring us to a wrap. You know, this was a fun first podcast. It was in some ways easier than I thought. It was in some ways harder.
By the way, I hadn't yet done the edit, so I just kicking myself.
The recording part was somewhat easier, somewhat harder.
Yeah. All right, let's listen again.
We definitely exceeded what we thought it would be time-wise.
Oh, goodness, yes.
But I think we've got something here.
I hope so. And the one way that we'll know if we have something here is if you guys let us know what you think. We've said it time and time again, but we want to hear your feedback. We want to hear what you think. If you like it, you don't like it, you think we can do something better, you think our taste in games is awful, and you think Monopoly should have been in our top 10, feel free to reach out to us too, though I don't know, we might just throw that one in the trash right away. But hey, we'll take whatever feedback you have, advice, pointers, general booze. Take your pick.
I would prefer not general booze, but specific booze.
Oh, specific booze. Yeah, specific criticisms.
Yeah, be specific.
You know, if you want to just do a general boo, that's fine. I'll take a few tomatoes.
Boo earns.
Boo earns. They're not saying boo. They're saying boo earns.
Of course.
Which one were you saying? I was saying boo earns.
We'll be sure to do this again in 2 weeks.
Okay, lot to unpack, right? Lot to unpack.
Oh,
First, what I'll say is throughout the episode, you were constantly like, hey, let us know what you think about that. If you agree, disagree, let us know on Facebook, Twitter.
I wanted engagement, Sean. I saw the future. I saw the future of the show.
Here we are putting something out into the ether, not knowing if anyone's listening, not knowing if anyone's rolling their eyes, not knowing if they're chuckling, if they're like vehemently like pounding their fist into the dirt because we're saying something stupid. Yeah, but it was just
Sean, I have a something for you to look up as we continue this discussion.
Okay.
I remember after this episode came out, and we've told this story before, that we were excited that 13 people had downloaded it.
Yeah.
Because it meant it was more than just, say, immediate friends and family, giving it some kind of a listen. How many people have heard that episode
So
now?
we've got a problem.
Oh, no.
The problem is
we have data issues?
Well, when Libsyn, they switched over to a different reporting method. And so I don't know if I'm able to actually see the old numbers. So like, it's interesting, up until a certain point before they switched over the old system, like we lost all of the old numbers.
Oh, well, I guess we'll never know.
Well, I think there used to be this way to look into the Libsyn legacy system. So let me,
it's fine. Put it on the guild or we'll mention it next episode. It's not.
Well, hold on. Let me see here.
Detective Sean. Detective Sean.
According to the current numbers, 130. But that's
not accurate.
That's not accurate.
130 within the last, say, number of years. Like some people going back to the very beginning.
Well, so here's the issue. Here's what I'll tell you now. I'll give you these numbers right now. We had in our legacy downloads just shy of 450,000 total. Not episode 1, Not any way,
No.
shape, or form. 450,000 legacy downloads for all episodes, and I'm trying to see if I could figure out where the legacy episodes end. And again, this is about how Libsyn was tracking their data and communicating listenership.
I'm really glad I've sent you down this rabbit hole, by the way.
I would say around episode 161, which was 3 years into the podcast.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's right. I'm just kind of guessing by when the numbers jump up significantly, because it stopped capturing the legacy downloads. So,
I see.
Yeah. So if that was 167, I can do math.
It's a mystery. I've sent us down a rabbit hole I did not intend.
So legacy downloads, we were on average 2,700 downloads per episode. But keep in mind, like early on, our numbers were significantly lower. Like the first 2 years, our numbers were significantly lower.
Okay, it's more than 13 now by some amount, and also we somehow have more than 500,000 downloads, I guess, based on the numbers you just said, which is wild.
Yeah. Well, so it looks like all time downloads are about 700,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Huh.
Yeah. No,
well, now we can't stop until we hit 1 million.
Yeah, kind of, right?
Kinda. Yeah. Just one more reason to keep going. Anyway.
There you go.
No, so look, fascinating, and I'm lucky that somewhere in that episode I didn't make some sort of rant, which I know I did in the early days of the show. Some sort of rant about Kickstarter shouldn't be a pre-order store. Following which my opinion dramatically changed when I worked for a board game company who used it as effectively a pre-order store. So I had a lot of stupid things to say about board games back in the day. Especially there was a lot of Watchdog Alex talking about price and value and all that fun stuff, and not from a base of knowledge. So I'm glad none of that stuff made it into the first episode. Just some embarrassing moments. But you know what, Sean? If that's the worst you got from that one, I'm feeling okay about that.
Well, yeah. Well, did you notice though? Just talking about that clip, we at that point we had decided that this was going to be a bi-weekly show.
Sure. Yeah, we were wiser at the start.
Yeah, and almost immediately, because I think we let the 2 weeks go by, and then we did episode 2, and then episode 3 was a week after episode 2. And we decided in episode 2, that we're going to do this, because at that point, I'm like, oh, this is no problem. Little did I know. I had done the edit, and for whatever reason, I was like, yeah, that was no big deal. Also, it's interesting. We would typically, so now we record on Thursdays. I usually edit on Saturday, releases for Patreon as soon as I'm done editing, releases to the general public on the Monday. Back then, we would have at the Duchy typically a Wednesday night game night. We would have a Sunday, usually all day game day. And then we'd wrap up Sunday around 7 or 8. We'd record the podcast. I remember coming home from work and editing the podcast Monday night and having it post some point Tuesday morning. I'd be up to like 10, 11 midnight editing the podcast after work on Monday nights. That was not well planned.
You taking on the editing load, among many other things, including the YouTube segments we briefly had, all of those fun things. There is a debt of work that I will never come close to meeting. Partly because that debt is still accruing. Sure. Because the edit is such a huge part of everything. But this show would not exist if you were not a dedicated, diligent human being.
Well, you could start paying it back. Actually, here's what we'll do. Back rubs at cons will apply directly to the principal, not the interest.
Okay, I love it. Great.
So just really get in there. Don't worry, I'll provide the oils. I just need you to really work out some of those knots.
Look, you can have a good long back rub, but you got to make it to St. Louis at some point.
All right.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So that was episode 1. of the Dukes of Dice.
As I said, when I listened to it a couple years back, I recall it being less embarrassing than I thought it was. Doesn't mean it didn't have its moments, but yeah, less embarrassing than I recall. The show certainly changed. If it hadn't changed in 256 episodes, that would be bad. Yeah. No, thanks for doing the work to kind of cut that together and pull up some clips. It was fun. It was fun taking a trip down memory lane with you.
Yeah, I was going to say, speaking of change, Alex.
Yes.
Let's talk very briefly. I don't think we need to go into too much here about the state of the Duchy, right?
Yes. Sean, how is the state of the Duchy?
It's great. It's just fine. Everything's great.
No, come on. You can't,
the state of the Duchy is strong. Yeah. Applause break. Yay.
Yay. He said it. He said the thing.
Let's count how many times you stand and clap for me, Alex, during the state of the Duchy. No, so Alex, you give me an off ramp about a month ahead of the anniversary episode every year for the last 3 years now, I think. And you're like, so what are we doing? Are we getting off? We keeping going? And yeah, we're keeping going. Here's what I do want to say though. And this is difficult because this is a board game podcast. It was board, card, and role-playing games, and then it became occasionally role-playing games. I think that there is enough differentiation in our hobby that people are here for board games. People are not so much here for Magic. People are not so much here for games like Warhammer. And I totally get that. There are exceptions. There are people that have played in the past and might be interested in kind of hearing about new stuff. I know our buddy Justin Jacobson from Restoration Games. He reached out to me on Twitter. He's like, "Yeah, I'm enjoying hearing this journey you're going through, and it's kind of putting the bug in my ear to maybe get into that." And I apologize, Justin, to you and your family if you do start playing tabletop miniatures. But here's what I would like, Alex, because I mean I'm at a point where these midweight Euros they're just killing my soul, Alex. They're really just killing my soul.
Your favorite whipping boy.
Well, and that's not all that we do, but that's a good chunk of the industry. There are times when I'm playing some of these review games where I'm just like, I could have been playing 18XX, or I could have been playing a GMT war game, or I could have been painting miniatures, or Nick and I could have busted out the Magic Commander decks and we played Commander with a couple people for an hour and a half, 2 hours. So realizing all of that, that's all well and good. That's how I want to spend my time, but I still need to have stuff to contribute to the show, reviews, things like that. And I think I've probably let COVID be a little bit of an excuse why I haven't gotten as many new plays, because I am investing my time into other things. But here's what I'm proposing, Alex, and you tell me what you think, and be honest. There are a lot of board game adjacent things in tabletop miniatures. So, like Blood Bowl, right? You enjoyed Blood Bowl. There are other things. There's Warhammer Fantasy, Shadowspire, there's Warcry, there's Kill Team, which are much more these boxed games that feel more like a board game. They really are more of an experience in a box, instead of you buy this box for this unit and then you have to buy another 8 units and then you pay. I mean, so what is the thought about on occasion, a couple times a year, trying out some of these different board game within the miniature hobby?
I mean, we reviewed Blood Bowl and I enjoyed reviewing it. So
okay.
I don't have an issue with it conceptually. We've done it before. I'm willing to try more stuff, I think, than I might have been open to in the past. I will say as an option, Sean, talking about this live, there have been times when increasingly frequently, but not every week, where Abby has jumped in to do a review. And that's gone pretty well. It would not be the worst thing in the world if every now and then there was sort of a review, like a pre-recorded review that you did that focused on something like that if you're super passionate about it. I don't think that's the end of the world. And I don't think talking about them more is the end of the world either. So I don't have an issue moving in that direction a bit and trying some of them. But I also think you're perfectly fine if you want to not necessarily have me on that and get someone who it can be kind of a regular contributor who is super passionate in that space. So I don't know, talking out loud, this is the first time you mentioned it, but that's my thought on that.
Yeah, and I think there's still an element of knowing our audience, right? Like what I don't want to do is I don't want to have a segment for 40K. Hey, the new Thousand Suns books just came out. Let's talk about all the different rules changes and the unit. Like, no, that's not what our listeners are here for. It just isn't. But there are a lot of quality board games and board game adjacent things that Games Workshop is doing. Some of the other miniature companies are doing. And again, this would be once or twice a year. And I think it would be interesting to hear your perspective. So for example, let me put it this way, Alex. This is the golden age of miniatures in these box sets. It is incredible. So back in the day, you had pewter, which was ugly and terrible to work with. You couldn't get a bunch of fine detail on it, hard to accept paint on it. And you're holding things in place, waiting for them to super glue. You're screaming at them, glue already, glue. And then you let go and the pieces are stuck to your fingers, but they're not stuck to each other. All right. There were plastic kits, but the plastic kits were terrible. Now, when you have a full plastic kit, like they're designed, they're computer drafted models, and they just have the perfect fit, the perfect like flat space on flat space. They're designed brilliant. I can't even say it. They're designed very well. A little Porky Pig moment there. Now you take it a step farther. For some of these box sets, they have this concept called push fit, where you don't even need glue. You just push some things in together. They're usually color coded, kind of like the Blood Bowl stuff was color, like there's a blue and green. So you don't even have to paint. So I would send you a box. You got to probably an hour to put stuff together. Which you like Legos, right? I mean,
look, I'm up for that. You don't have to convince me anymore. I am accepting your challenge.
Whew,
I've accepted the Sean Ramirez.
Oh boy.
You pick something that fits this description, and I will play it in preparation for a review.
Okay.
I will find it probably won't be played with Abby, but I will find someone to play it with, and I will get you my thoughts.
Okay.
That's my commitment.
Cool.
I'm down. Yeah.
All right.
Also, though, I will note, what with the baby on the way, there's at least probably one or two shows where it's going to be your call here. So if there's something that you have me out of the way for, and you want to dive deep into that, that might be the time to do it, to let the full Sean experience out.
And like I said, I want to be very respectful of our viewers or our listeners.
Well, here's the thing though. We did the survey once. And we, at least at that time, and maybe I'll put the survey up again. We had some sort of contest associated with it. Probably have to do that to have it make any sense. But the majority of folks listening identify with you and your game tastes. So I think if you have an instinct towards something, I don't think it's a bad idea to go with that instinct.
Maybe. But again, I don't want to take it so far that we're reviewing new releases of rule books for 40K or for Age of Sigmar or anything like that.
I have a question as far as it pertains to the intro.
Sure.
Should we change it from board, card, and occasionally role-playing games to board, card, miniatures adjacent, and probably not role-playing games?
That's something to consider. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Something to workshop. You made a prediction. Yep. I'm trying to remember when you made this prediction, Sean, but you made a prediction, I think, shortly after you found out that I was having a baby, that would be a few months after. The show would survive a few months of me being a dad.
4 months.
And then 4 months. Okay.
It's the mirror. It's the mirror of I had Chewy for 4 months and then decided to start the podcast. Right.
But Sean, here's the thing. I do want to have an episode, and it would be timed for about May, when I can come on and officially say, I Alex Jason Goldsmith, am currently on this episode as old as Sean was at the start of this podcast.
Ah.
Yeah, so that pushes out your timeline to more like 7 months.
Okay. Huh.
But also, we don't have an official countdown timer on the show. So
no, we don't. What are your thoughts, Alex, about the state of the Duchy?
So I think we've talked about this in the past couple. It is interesting going from, something that you get hyper invested in and is growing and you have a lot of engagement and recognition for. And Sean, I don't know what the listenership numbers are. I know with fewer folks driving, they'd have gone down anyway. It's not something I ask you about. I don't think I've asked you about the actual download numbers in a very long time.
Sure.
And maybe I'd be surprised positively or negatively with what those actually are. It's interesting how people can kind of sometimes justify a reality as intentional or beneficial. And what I mean by that is we don't have a ton of review copy games. Some of that is we haven't actively engaged publishers to try and get them, mainly because it's a nightmare logistically. I know if I were a publisher, there's a very, very small chance I'm sending 2 copies of a game to get 1 review.
Right.
Especially on a podcast channel, an audio-only medium, effectively. So I think there's that element to it. I think there's also the element of not being proactive enough. There's sort of a philosophical element of enjoying primarily discussing or reviewing games that you can actually go out and buy. That hasn't always been true, but I think we tend to like that more than not. But some of it's also, I don't know, are you big enough to justify review copies? Debatable is the answer to that. And there's an unintentional benefit, Sean, in that while I would like to have relationships with publishers, good relationships with folks, I've got friends who work at all sorts of publishers, there is an element of if you are counting on review copies or trying to get an angle on the new hotness, it's not that you're necessarily going to always give it a positive review just to give it a positive review, but you're more likely to try and preserve that relationship and give something a positive review as a result. And whether that's due to not being big enough / engaging and getting review copies or whatever the case is, we are unencumbered as far as feeling influenced. There isn't some sort of thought of me working in a publisher and being in a glass house throwing stones and worried about retaliation or whatever else could possibly come up as a fear or thought. So there's something liberating in that. And I think, by the way, it makes me more inclined to say, go for it, Sean. Like, if that's the direction you want to take it, go for it. And at the same time, like, there's absolutely, to be honest, like a disappointment. Like, I love when people contribute on the Guild. I want to hear from new folks. I want to know people are listening. I want to know this thing that we spend time on planning and discussing and keeping the fire burning is still connecting with someone. And sometimes that's there. You see it in the Guild, and sometimes you feel that emptiness. And it's nobody's fault. But there is an element of sadness that can come about from that arc that the show took or has taken. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I can tell you exactly, I could point to the month. And it was when I took over the law firm. I mean, when I bought out the old owner and I took over the law firm, and I had less energy especially during the day, right? Like sending out emails to publishers and doing things to generally grow our listener base and run contests and monitor social media and all of that. Like that completely went by the wayside, because essentially I had my job as an attorney, and then I had like a part-time job as a podcaster, at least in terms of amount of hours. Then when I took over the company, well, guess what? I now had another part-time job as a business manager, essentially, managing the company in addition to doing all the legal work. I spent, this last weekend, I spent like 6 hours doing the monthly billing for July. And even on a daily basis, if someone called with a question about their bill, well, that's above my pay grade, now, that goes to me. So, I mean, in my mind, I know that was in any sort of thing like this, there's always some amount of attrition, right? You're going to lose people to whatever, but ideally, if you're adding new listeners at a greater rate, you're going to have growth. And we had some tremendous growth there for a long time. But I do know that I haven't been able to put really any sizable amount of that energy into trying to kind of build the brand and build the listener base, things like that. Our buddy Nick is probably one of the biggest Dukes of Dice cheerleaders, and he had ideas for us to be big, like really, really big. He's like, Penny Arcade, they started off as this little tiny comic strip, and now look at them. Like, what? Like, why can't you guys do that? And he's not by no means is he the kind of guy that has wild, fantastic ideas that have no base in reality. He's I mean, if you knew Nick, he is very much grounded in reality. And so I think for him to possibly recognize that is a little sad for me, to know that. I'm not saying we were going to become Penny Arcade, but we were on track to be something bigger than what we are. And I'm not, and there's a part of me that's like, oh, I wish it would be interesting to see what that would have looked like. I'm not like super sad in the sense I enjoy what I'm doing now. I enjoy where my life has gone. But I think it's a matter of growing older and setting priorities. Like, this is still a priority. But in a lot of ways it was, aside, put family and that aside, and doing the bare minimum to make money and pay bills and put food on the table. Like, I think the Dukes of Dice was my priority, and it's not. It's not.
It was, by the way, it was mine too.
Yeah.
Right. Like I said, a relationship that one of the key reasons it collapsed was the Dukes of Dice, but it was because of the love and the energy and the bond of friendship that. Sorry to interrupt your point.
No, I was pretty much done.
No, okay, that's fine. But there's a fear, and perhaps it's unfounded, but there's a fear of if the show goes, so goes the friendship. Mm-hmm. That so goes that point of connection. So goes that the attrition kind of becomes something more. That I lose the connection to Albuquerque, I lose the connection to you, I lose the connection to that home base in the Duchy, that kind of gaming where things kind of really picked up. And the thing that sparked the move to St. Louis for me, the thing that indirectly led to me meeting Abby. But I mean, aside from that, the ending of that is hard to fathom, because I worry that it would mean losing you. And that thought makes me incredibly sad. And it doesn't mean it has to be true, right? We had a pretty damn good friendship before the show. And there's no reason to think, other than location, it wouldn't continue that way after. But there is that fear. And I think that's also part of it too. Part of what keeps the thing going.
Yeah, I mean, so like I look at like my buddy Anthony, right? Like we've interacted a little bit, but like it's amazing like how close we were for a period of time, and then to just kind of drift apart. I look at non-gaming buddy Gary. He was the PE teacher at the school I was teaching at for a couple of years. Like, we were incredibly close, and we talk every now and then, and we drift apart. I've got my high school buddies, Ellie, Mitch, and Andy, and we probably message each other a couple times a week here and there. We see each other probably once or twice a year in non-pandemic times. And it's interesting because like I assume that what happened with Andy, Ellie, and Mitch would kind of be us. Like, we talk every now and then, but we'd figure out a way to get together a couple times a year, even though we haven't done that really. And we just it's like picking up where you left off. You know what I mean? Like, I don't like with Andy, Ellie, and Mitch, I don't need to know what happened in their life every single day in the last 6 months, but we're just going to kind of pick up like no time's gone by. And I would imagine the same if that happened to the podcast.
I hope so, but there is something about that connection. I didn't grow up with a lot of friends. I switched schools a lot growing up, and there isn't a lot of connection from, say, high school. And there's some connection from college and some connection from different phases, but there aren't a lot of people I would tend to call a really close friend. And so I really value those kinds of relationships, and there's a lot of fear and covetousness. And you're probably right. That's probably how it would go down. But I don't want to test that right now. So,
well, and I think the other thing too is, having kids definitely adds an extra little piece to that puzzle.
I mean, you talked about shifting priorities, right? That's the one. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's also kind of going back to the attention piece of it too, Sean. There is that element of, I having been in TV news and being in a position that was well viewed and decently high profile, I haven't been in that kind of a space or role. I mean, Gray Fox sort of, but not really. And this is sort of the broadcast outlet. This is the attention outlet. So I don't know. I don't know how to achieve it. But if you're listening to this and you're in the guild or you haven't joined the guild, just come in and say hi.
Yeah. I
just want to know you're around. Just want to know there's someone on the receiving end of all this.
Yeah, it's nice to know that we're just not talking to these microphones and it's just sitting on, an encoded MP3 file on a server out there. And don't get me wrong. Like we get feedback from the guild and we get like touching stories and anecdotes and so not to discount anything that anybody's been putting out there, but it is like it's nice to know that what we're doing has some small impact, brighten someone's day in some way, shape, or form.
Well, and the other piece of this too, Sean, is without conventions going or without being at conventions, it also dampens the ability to kind of connect into that network and see familiar faces and sit down at a table and play games with people. And, going back to 2017, when I took that trip around the world, it was so amazing to be able to sit at a table and play games with people in Europe, in Asia, and in Australia. New Zealand, not Australia. Oceania, if I'm going by continents, who this podcast had reached. So I don't know. I haven't experienced kind of hearing about that in a while. So just feeling kind of melancholy, I guess. Just feeling a little melancholy.
So here's something interesting I thought about. If you had taken that vacation, I think if my math is correct, it was about 4 or 5 months before I took over the business, the law firm.
Oh, there's a chance the podcast ends.
The podcast would have ended. I think,
yeah.
Had you taken that vacation after I had taken over the business.
Sean, vacation is putting it mildly. This was a soul-searching journey around the world, an epic trip of self-discovery and getting to know the real Alex.
Yeah, 14 weeks, right?
14 weeks. 14 weeks. Yeah.
No, I would have pulled the plug. I'm pretty sure I would have pulled
I'm pretty sure you would have. Yeah. I don't always make it easy on you, Sean. I've been better lately. I've gotten more mature. I wouldn't say mature, but more mature.
More mature. Yeah, it's all relative.
Yeah. Well, anyway, who knows? Who knows what the next few months looks like? There's this big due date, 10/29 in my head, and I know life will be significantly different for me after that time. I don't know what the full effects of that are going to be just yet. I'm excited. I believe it's going to be amazing. I can't wait to meet my daughter. But it's going to be different. And we'll see. So anyway, glad to have done it with you for another year. I don't know how we keep doing this between the two cities and keeping it afloat, but somehow there's like a hand above water still.
It's pretty amazing. So like 7 years, that's a long time. I think that's longer than most marriages on average.
Hey, don't you podcast cheat on me, Sean.
Hold on, let me. Well, I was just on Boards Alive, by the way.
I saw that got posted. Hope Aaron and crew are well. I don't know if we'll ever finish that D&D campaign, but, here's hoping.
Oh, the average length of marriage in the U.S. is 8.2 years.
Oh, we're not there yet. No, we got to beat that.
See, that's the divorce lawyer in me, hoping it's a shorter number, a smaller number.
Better for fees.
We got to get that down to 3 years. Come on, people.
Oh, man.
Check your partner's phones. I'm sure there's something in there they don't want you to see.
You should have the law firm sponsor the podcast. See how that
goes. I
over.
totally should. Oh, my accountant would love that. Oh,
from
man,
one hand into
she would be so
other.
Pissed at me.
All right, wait. I do want to cut an ad for the law firm. Can we do that?
Wait, right. Absolutely.
Yeah, for the law firm. Are you sick of your stupid partner? Call Sean Ramirez, attorney at law, and he'll get them dumped onto the street.
Well, no, it's got to be like board game related. Like, do you find that your partner has analysis paralysis when you play board games? I'm sure there's someone out there that's much snappier at making their decisions that's your true soulmate.
Your true board gaming soulmate. If you want to find Mr. Roland Wright, go contact Sean Ramirez, attorney at law. He'll pack away that old game and get you into the new hotness.
Yikes.
Yikes.
All right, Alex. Well, that's 7 years.
7 years. It's a wrap. We did it.
Seven. Here's to another 7. I mean, it's possible.
Wow.
It's possible.
Look, I'm not going to say it's not possible. Boy, I don't know if these will get more depressing with each passing year, though. We'll see. All right. Well, here's to another 7 years. You said it. You heard it here first. The Dukes of Dice going to live forever. All right. Well, hey, Sean, we would just kind of hard wrap up, but, we do have a duty to the guild, speaking of the guild, talking about the best of the rest, the games we did not pick but could have for this 7th anniversary episode. Blaine Miley suggested The Magnificent Seven, movie reference, and also, hey, 7th year.
And then Jimmy DM90 suggested Stairway to 7. I think that was if we were giving like our top 10 games also, because we were like ascending up the list, I think.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Instead of Stairway to Heaven.
Sure. I know the song.
That don't get the reference.
Yeah, no, I got that.
Okay.
Brett Mowers with Copper Crowns. That was my runner-up this week. Copper referencing the 7th anniversary, and Crowns referencing the nobility that we are.
And I had some concerns. I don't know that dukes are allowed to wear crowns.
Yeah, that's fair.
So like our duke is more of like a late 19th century duke, a little top hat and monocle and sash.
Yeah. Are we gonna get an updated version of the logo? Should I get like Kwanchai Moria to do an updated Dukes of Dice logo?
I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I'm not. I think it's better than many.
Sure. Look, I'm very proud of the logo you made, Sean.
But it's definitely made by someone who is not an artist and not a graphic designer. That being me. So yeah, I mean, it could certainly maybe use a polish or an update or start it from scratch.
All right. Well, we'll get back to that. All right. After that, Sean, it's back to you.
Yeah, John Soleil suggested 7 Wonders of the Ducal World. Again, 7 is key.
Well, and worth mentioning, Sean, my top game of all time back in the very first episode was 7 Wonders.
Yeah, it sure was.
Yeah. And then Nick Hayes with Septsational. So kind of sensational mixed with Sept for 7, and that was a pretty cool name. And Nick also had a nice heartfelt note on the guild, and appreciated seeing that. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Well, all right, Alex. So I guess I'll say it again. Here's to the last 7 years and 7 years to come. Oh, kind of like the Rick and Morty, the Rick and Morty pilot, where he's like, Rick and Morty, 100 years, Dukes of Dice, 100 years. All right, buddy. Well, that's going to do it. Episode 256, the 7-year Duke-iversary. Thanks again to Josh and Gurr for the episode title, What's in the Box? Until next time, we'll see you at season 8. This is Sean.
And Alex.
And Duke you later, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on August 12th, 2021. Our theme music provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out DicetowerNetwork.com. And for all ladies in the Duchy, go to DukesOfDice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to our sponsor, Game Toppers. You can learn more about Game Toppers at GameToppersLLC.com. Remember, if it's not a showstopper, it's not a game topper. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Until then, game on.